Welcome to this explainer. Today we're exploring a practical system for meeting life without completely losing your center. We live in a world that is constantly shifting, right? But human pressure, well, that doesn't really change. We all face uncertainty, disappointment, criticism, and that frustrating gap between what we want and what we can actually control. Stoicism is built exactly for that gap. So let's explore how it serves as a reliable map for modern life.
Now, most advice out there for getting through hard moments tries to teach you how to change the situation itself. But Stoicism, it starts somewhere entirely different. It doesn't actually ask you to change the world. Instead, it asks you to change your relationship with the situation. It's really all about protecting your center.
Because let's just be honest for a second about the reality of the human experience. Life always brings pressure. It brings uncertainty, and of course, disappointment. You just can't make the outside world obey you, and if you demand that it does, well, you're just going to keep pressing against a brick wall, blaming yourself for the pain. So at the very core of this philosophy is a simple, honestly brilliant distinction. Some things are in your control, and others are not. It's a beautifully plain, practical map. Think about it. Your judgments, your choices, your effort, your attention, these are totally yours. But outcomes, other people's opinions, timing, random events, those are not fully yours. Basically, life gives you the conditions, and you supply the response. But when we forget that map, when we mix these two distinct categories together, life suddenly feels far heavier than it actually is. We act as if our own effort and other people's opinions sit in the exact same bucket. And when you try to command things that literally don't answer to you, like someone else's mood or hoping for a perfectly flawless outcome, the result is just constant, exhausting tension. And right here is where we find the true root of that tension. A huge amount of our suffering comes not from the events themselves, but actually from our interpretation of those events. Our minds aren't just passive receivers of reality, they're interpreters. The mind loves to add stories. And it's these added stories that create all that fear, frustration, and that heavy sense of helplessness. So, Stoicism trains you to clearly separate the fact from the story. It separates what actually happened from what you are telling yourself about it. It's kind of like thinking of your mind as a camera lens. The scene in front of you is just there, right? But the lens determines whether the image is sharp or completely distorted. If your lens is distorted by some heavy negative story, well, everything is going to look like a threat. But the beauty is, right between the raw event and the story you add to it, that's where your freedom lies. You absolutely cannot control everything that happens to you. Like, you don't control the weather. But you do control whether you grab an umbrella before you leave the house. You can control how you meet what happens. And that is exactly where Stoicism lives. To understand how to actually use that freedom, though, we really have to look at how we naturally operate. A reaction is automatic. It's incredibly fast. It's deeply emotional. It's a habit, usually driven by pride or fear. It's essentially your mind immediately jumping to the absolute worst possible conclusion before you've even taken a single breath. Now contrast that with a response. A response is slower. It's clear. It's deliberately chosen. Stoicism is the ongoing, everyday practice of turning those fast, knee-jerk reactions into clear, measured responses. And the thing is, it does this not by suppressing your emotion. You definitely still feel things deeply, but by seeing that emotion clearly before acting on it.
When something difficult happens, the mind instantly builds meaning. We think, this is bad, this is unfair, this is personal. And the speed of this automatic reaction is just blinding. It happens in a fraction of a second. That very first interpretation is almost always the loudest voice in the room, but it is rarely the truest.
So Stoicism teaches us to interrupt this chain just long enough to ask ourselves, okay, what is actually true here? What part of this situation is just a raw fact, and what part is my own added panic? This little moment, this is the Stoic pause. And inside that quiet pause, you ask the second absolutely crucial question. What part is mine to control? Is this something that's mine to choose? Is it mine to shape? Or is this something that is simply mine to accept? And finally, you ask, what response matches my character? What would a steady, fair, and wise response even look like right now? That small gap, that deliberate pause between the event and your action, it literally changes everything. It brings your attention right back to where it can actually do useful work. Because ultimately, the quality of your life depends far less on events and much more on your interpretation of them. Take a travel delay, for example. It becomes either a total day-ruining disaster or simply a delay, just a chance to catch up on a good book. Or think about a moment where someone gives you really harsh notes on your work. That criticism becomes either a direct personal attack that threatens your worth, or it's useful feedback you can actually use to improve. The event itself does not change at all, but the meaning you assign to it absolutely does.
And this right here is why Stoicism is so often misunderstood as just coldness or resignation. But it's neither of those things. It's not about being emotionless. It's just about being less controlled by that very first raw emotion. It's definitely not passive acceptance. It's a deliberate response. You still feel things, you still act, but you don't completely lose yourself in the reaction.
Over time, and through steady repetition, this becomes an unbreakable habit. You start noticing the very first story your mind creates. You start questioning it instead of just blindly obeying it. And you begin choosing your responses based on clarity and character rather than pure impulse. You're essentially strengthening that inner muscle every single time you pause. And this is exactly how Stoicism turns from a concept into a practice. Not in dusty, abstract philosophy books, but in ordinary, daily life. It's in those passive-aggressive emails you receive, it's in the annoying travel delays, in the criticism at work, even in the massive uncertainty of the future. This is where the philosophy actually lives and breathes. Every single moment becomes a chance to return to control over yourself. Not control over the world, because as we've seen, you can literally never fully secure that, but control over your own judgment. And ultimately, that really is enough. Because when your judgment becomes steady, life becomes genuinely manageable, even when it is far from easy. Stoicism doesn't magically remove pressure from your life. Instead, it teaches you how not to become the pressure yourself. It teaches you how to stop adding to the weight of it all.
And when that mental shift happens, you finally stop asking how to control everything around you. Instead, you are left with the only question that truly matters. What kind of person are you becoming inside which you cannot control? That is Stoicism for modern life.